there's a brand new villain in the world of college football, and that villain's name is Brian Kelly. Now, Brian Kelly made a decision, and it was a decision that was not very well liked by a lot of people. But if you've paid any attention to Brian Kelly's story or in his background, ask the people in Cincinnati about Brian Kelly. He bolted for them similarly to how he bolted Notre Dame to go to LSU, and he left the Bearcats to go to Notre Dame. And if I'm not mistaken, it was right before a bowl game as well, too. So Brian, this isn't like this is the first trip around this sort of circus for Brian Kelly. It's not. Like this is kind of what he's done before. This is par for the course when it comes to Brian Kelly. But it was funny because last night, if you didn't watch the game and all you did was go on social media and all you did was look at some of the reactions and some of the feedback from people on social media, you would have thought LSU was getting buried by 4 touchdowns. You would have thought it was a disaster. You had memes. You had GIFs. You had all sorts of stuff that was being thrown out there because everybody was rallying and rooting against Brian Kelly. It was phenomenal. And all it did was showcase that this has nothing to do with Brian Kelly, the coach, has nothing to do with the situation at LSU. And the situation at LSU is this. They were in the market for a head coach because they've been on a little bit of a downslide since their national championship year with Coach O. Who, the pictures of Coach of Ed Orgeron and, one of his female acquaintances laying in a bed together started to resurface last night. That was always fun for anybody else to watch. If you wanted to get creeped out at all, that was always something you could tune into. But the whole thing with Brian Kelly is fascinating because it's got zero to do with him as a coach. This has everything to do with Brian Kelly and his fake Louisiana accent that he had at an LSU basketball game. Has nothing to do with him as a coach. Like I said, he's pulled this stuff before. He's left a program to go to another one. Like Notre Dame fans are like, why the hell would you leave us? What do you mean? He did the same thing to Cincinnati. And by the way, got about $90 million a year, or $90 million over a 8 or 9 year stretch to go to LSU. Dude's getting paid. But all of this has to do with the fact that he showed you how everything was made. That's all this is. For example, it's Labor Day, right? It's going to be a lot of people out there barbecuing. It's going to be a lot of people out there coming up later on. They're going to be ripping beers. Maybe, 1 or 2 heaters behind their ear. Flask in the back pocket. So when you tell your wife, like, hey, I'm going to go out there and check on the chicken, you lift the grill lid up and you duck down and start slamming out of the flask. Come on, it's the oldest trick in the book. We all know it. Come on, guys. Everybody knows it. You know the old song and dance. Don't want her to see me having another beer, so you make sure you don't actually leave any of the cans around or any of the bodies. So what do? You dump everything into a cup, and then you make sure that you're the one that takes out the trash. Okay, that is rule number 1. Don't want her to see any of this stuff. I'll be the guy to take out the trash. And then you'll throw a steak on the grill. You'll season it, you'll sauce it up, and you'll slow cook it so it takes a little bit longer so you can have a couple of more drinks. Like this is what a lot of people are going to be pulling this stunt later on today. Trust me, I've been there. All right, every trick in the book. Here's the reality, though. You're satisfied and you're happy cooking the steak. You're even more happy eating the steak. You probably don't want to see how that steak got to the supermarket, though, right? Like the supermarket near my house, they got ribeyes on sale, like one of those value pack deals, to where it's like $7.99 a pound. I can assure you those things are going to be almost gone when I go to the store later on to pick up a ribeye. And the only reason I'm doing it is because, hey, it's not fancy steakhouse quality, but it's going to be quality enough to where I could throw it on the grill, and if I add enough seasoning, not bad. And I'll work with that. Let me tell you something. I don't want to know how that steak got to that supermarket. Not interested. Okay? I've seen No Country for Old Men. I know what that cattle bullet does. All right? I've seen all I need to see. I don't want to see how that steak got to that shelf and into my bag that I probably have to pay 10 cents for because I forgot the bag at home to bring home, to throw on a grill, to slow cook so I can drink more just so my wife doesn't know what's going on. I don't want to see how it got there. I'm not interested. Because once I see how it gets there, all of a sudden it makes me think differently about the steak. All Brian Kelly did was show you how the state got there. Brian Kelly has pulled this before. He's left another program to go to another program for a better opportunity. He's used programs as a stepladder to get to where he wanted to get to. His problem was he showed you how full of it he is. So when he goes to an LSU basketball game and sounds like one of the crab fishermen off the original True Detective in Louisiana, you kind of scratch your head and go, wait, what? Aren't you from the Northeast? What are we doing here, dude? That was his problem. Not that he left the program. Not that he went somewhere else. Yeah, you could say, well, he could have waited. He could have done all these things. Absolutely. And Brady Quinn has nailed that from the get-go. But when he showed up and all of a sudden had the fake Louisiana accent and all the other things that came along with it, there was the video of him dancing with some recruit, which was creepy enough. Like those guys, were playing Twister on a dinner tray. It's like, come on, can we get a little bit of space here? And then the guy ends up leaving anyways, and he goes to Alabama. Right? The whole thing was creepy. But Brian Kelly showed you, oh yeah, I can be full of it. And here's the example. I can talk and give a fake accent, and here's the example. That's why people were burying him last night. That game was fun. LSU was in that game, got down to the wire, and once the extra point was blocked, you would have thought the worst person on planet Earth had just been convicted to a life sentence in prison. Everybody was cheering against LSU. Everybody was cheering against Brian Kelly. All of a sudden, everybody was a Florida State fan. See, that's what you get, Brian Kelly. What'd he do? Same thing he did to Cincinnati when he went to Notre Dame. Oh, it's because he was full of it, and he told you he was full of it. Had he just kept his mouth shut and talked normally, he probably wouldn't have gotten as much heat as he got. So let's take a listen. Here was Brian Kelly. Let's hear whether or not he sounds like he's from Louisiana. This was after the loss last night in his debut as LSU head coach.
I'm not here to, say we take any solace in a loss. That's not why I'm here at LSU, to learn about great lessons in losses. But the reality of it is we've got some learning to do. We've got to coach better, and we've got to play better.
If he would have sounded like that, same tone, same sort of vibe, no BS, do you think some of the pushback on Brian Kelly would be as heavy as it is? Because I don't. I really don't. Coaches leave programs all the time. It happens all the time. Like, coaches end up going, like, there's an old story. There was a story from, and this came out years later, but Barry Switzer, and I remember hearing this story, that Barry Switzer would go, if he was going to a recruit's house, sometimes he would go around the side yard before he walked in the door, and he would look in the trash cans to see what kind of beer the dad drank. So when he walked into the house and he sat down, the dad would say, "Can I get you something to drink?" And he'd be like, "Well, only if it's an old Milwaukee, because I don't drink anything else." Huh, funny you say that. I'm the same way. Get out of here. They're all full of crap. All of them. Brian Kelly just spilled the beans. He told you how it's made. Well, this is the game. I got to lie a little bit. And he may have made an ass of himself. But if you're watching that game last night, if you just looked at the reaction and the overwhelming negativity towards anything LSU, you would have thought they were getting blown out by 60 points. I'm thinking to myself, this is a 7-point game. And it's an opening game. So there's going to be some mistakes. And you got a brand new head coach there. And they go down the field, almost the entire length of the field. They score with a second remaining, and then they get an extra point blocked. And then once the extra point gets blocked, what's the immediate feedback? That's what you get for not going for two. Hold on a second. They had all the momentum. If that game goes to overtime, based on how LSU was playing and Florida State was playing, who do you give the advantage to? Because I'll take LSU. They had all the momentum. We've seen this play out in the NFL. Chiefs, Bills, divisional round. Kansas City had all the momentum. Remember Patriots, Chiefs in the AFC Championship game? Kansas City never got the football back. Never touched it again. Same with the Falcons, Patriots, Super Bowl. That game went to overtime. Atlanta never saw the ball again. Once New England got it to start the overtime, it was over. They had all the momentum. LSU had all the momentum. And if not for a blocked extra point, we could be talking about a crazy comeback win, nuts on the table, length of the field drive to get into overtime for Brian Kelly in his debut. Instead, what we get is everybody bearing the guy. I'm not trying to ball wash him. I'm not trying to be part of the Brian Kelly Defense League. I'm just saying this has got less to do with the fact that he left Notre Dame to go to LSU, and it's got everything to do with the fact that the guy gave a fake Louisiana accent and let everybody know how the stuff was made.